Welcome, everybody. This is the third session in day 2 of the Parapsychology Foundation International Affiliates Conference, and we're delighted to see you all here. I'm going to read the biographies of our 2 presenters today, and boy, it was hard getting your biographies onto one slide, I have to say. I had to leave a lot of stuff out. So the talk is called Parapsychology in Brazil, the history from the 1970s until today. Fátima Regina Machado has a PhD in social psychology from USP, the University of Sao Paulo, a PhD in communications and semiotics from Pontifical Catholic University of Sao Paulo, PUC, and an MSc in sciences of religions from the same university, as well as attended the summer study program at the Foundation for the Research on the Nature of Man, which is now the Rhine Research Center, back in the 90s. She serves on the board of directors of the Parapsychological Association, is a postdoctoral fellow in the graduate program of Sciences of Religion at PUC. She's also a co-founder of Interseed, a laboratory for anomalistic psychology and psychosocial processes. Wellington Zangari has a Master's of Sciences of Religion from PUC as well, 1996, and a PhD in social psychology from the University of Sao Paulo. He's currently a professor in the Department of Social and Occupational Psychology, which is a part of the Institute of Psychology at the University of Sao Paulo, where he teaches, conducts research. He currently supervises the theses of students at the master's and doctoral level. Among other things, Zangari is the vice coordinator of the Laboratory of Social Psychology of Religion and the coordinator of Interseed, which is now located at the University of Sao Paulo. So here's your PowerPoint coming up, and I will get out of your way and take it away, you guys.
Okay. Can you hear me? It's okay? Okay. First of all, I would like to stress on behalf of us, both of us, that it is an honor and a pleasure to have the opportunity of presenting the recent history of parapsychology in Brazil from the 1970s to today in this conference organized by the Parapsychology Foundation. With the privilege of being PF affiliates, the participation in this virtual conference gives us a great and very interesting opportunity to exchange information and to learn about parapsychology in other countries. Thank you, Lisette Colley, for continuing the work of Mrs. Eileen Garrett, your grandmother, and Mrs. Eileen Colley, your mother. We are really glad that Ana de Malas, the 4th generation, is also dedicated to maintain the vision of Parapsychology Foundation's founder, her great-grandmother Eileen Garrett, and eager to assist in the revitalization of the Foundation's programs. We also thank Nancy Zingrone, Carlos Alvarado, and the PF staff for contributing to the PF continuous work. So thank you all. In this presentation, we will talk about the developments of parapsychology in Brazil from the 1970s to today. Despite this focus, it's essential to take a very brief glance into the previous history in order to understand the Brazilian context and why some disputes and contests were so relevant, and also in order to understand some advances and changes in the Brazilian scenario of Psi research. After contextualizing the Brazilian scenario, we will present social and organizational developments of parapsychology, developments in terms of scientific and scholarly work, and from the 1970s, and then the current perspective for parapsychology in Brazil. I hope you can understand our accent, okay, our Brazilian accent. First of all, we would like to present some information about Brazil. It's a huge country. Today, we will try to cover the main references of parapsychology in Brazil, but for sure, there will be some regional groups that will not be covered. We apologize in advance for that. In this slide, you can localize Brazilian states and capitals. So later, after we present everything, you can check here where the locations are, okay? Well, let's talk about parapsychology in the Brazilian context. For me, Nancy, the image covers part of the words. I don't know if it's okay for you. There in the slide, well, I hope it's okay. In a previous paper published in 1997, we stated parapsychology was introduced in Brazil by religious practitioners, especially the Spiritists and the Catholics. Each religion uses parapsychological knowledge to legitimize faith among their constituencies. Intellectual Brazilian Spiritists, for example, have adhered to metapsychic postulates that offer them the scientific support they need. Spiritists developed a defensive discourse through which they defended their faith against the attack of Catholics, who, in an offensive discourse, declared the Spiritist interpretation of psi phenomena and experiences implausible. We can say, Nan is saying that something is covered, but it's okay. I think it's okay now. We can correct it later. We can say that parapsychology was established in Brazil in a context of cultural richness, pervaded by religious beliefs and superstitions, with profound social contrasts. In such social scenario, parapsychology was always something that caused curiosity, and it was often a target of unscrupulous exploration, besides being used as an instrument to defend religious and, more recently, New Age perspectives. As a consequence of a series of misuse, parapsychology in Brazil was, and still is, a word quite misunderstood. There is a smorgasbord of subjects and practices that were sheltered under the umbrella of parapsychology, where everything strange, bizarre, and seemingly out of the ordinary was pushed. Information coming from the US and Europe was frequently interpreted as spread according to the particular interests of determined groups. For this reason, if you say you are a parapsychologist in Brazil, it's common to be asked, what's your religion? People identify different parapsychological approaches according to religious perspectives. In the end of the 19th century and the early 20th century, some groups met to discuss information brought from Europe and the US. This included information about Spiritism founded in France by Allan Kardec, and about psychical research from England, especially the study of great mediums. Brazil was officially eminently Catholic, and this interest seemed to be threatening. For some periods, Spiritism and other mediumistic religions, as the African and African-Brazilian ones, were considered against the law, and their practitioners were persecuted and arrested. So it was a very complicated scenario. During the dictatorship of Getúlio Vargas, there was a growing interest on scientific research. The Catholic Church fought Spiritism through publications and speech, using psychical research to uncover the spiritualistic lies, as they said. In turn, Spiritist intellectuals translated several articles and books on psychical research and parapsychology, giving their interpretation of facts and results. For example, the translation of the book of Dr. Loisa Hine, Hidden Channels of the Mind, used the word spirit instead of mind in the title, and throughout the book. Notably, in the 1950s, the Catholic Church undertook a strong educational campaign against Kardecist spiritism and Umbanda, a mediumistic Brazilian religion. Some prominent Catholic authors were Frei Boaventura Cloppenburg and Álvaro Negromonte. Among the spiritist opponents were Carlos Embaçaí and Deolindo Amorim. The anthropologist David Hess, who studied this dispute in Brazil, has called it a war of words. This gives us an idea of the scenario where parapsychology developed in Brazil from the 1970s. Lots of changes happened in terms of interest and possibility of a real scientific study of parapsychological phenomena or experiences. First, very slowly, and more recently, much faster than ever in the history of the country. Let's see the steps for the change. The war of words has heated, especially from the 60s to the 80s. Television media and printed press were instrumental to this. In the 60s, the Spanish Catholic priest Oscar González Quevedo, who had studied psychical research and Rhenian parapsychology, arrived in Brazil with the mission, exactly the mission, to save the country from spiritism, using his knowledge to prove that spiritist phenomena had no scientific basis. His main opponent at that time was the spiritist intellectual and engineer Hernani Guimarães Andrade. Quevedo and Andrade kept the war of words on parapsychology active until the late 80s, early 90s, a war that diminished as they became older. In 1963, Andrade founded the IBPP, Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics, dedicated especially to poltergeist mediumship, such as drop-in communicators, near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, reincarnation cases, studies, as well as experimental research on what he called MOB, that means biological organizer model, and refers to the spiritual body. And so he explains through this model how the spiritual body would work, something like that. And instrumental transcommunication, communication with discarnate spirits using electronic devices. In the 1970s, Quevedo founded the CLAP. We say in Portuguese CLAP as like clap in English. The Latin American Center for Parapsychology, dedicated to offer courses, conduct parapsychological case studies in general, counseling, and treatment of psychological and physical disturbances caused by the imbalance of mental energy, according to his psychopathological view of psi phenomena in general. Andrade passed away in 2003, and some followers have continued IBPP research. Quevedo is still alive, and he is living practically isolated, but his parapsychology center continues, now with the name of IPQ, Father Quevedo Institute of Parapsychology. In the 70s, 80s, and 90s, Quevedo participated in TV shows where he had debates with representatives of different perspectives on parapsychology. Quevedo is for sure the most popular character recognized by the general public as connected to parapsychology. He always repeated a phrase to refer to spiritist phenomena or any event attributed to discarnate or supernatural beings or forces. The phrase is, "This does not exist," with a very strong Spanish accent. Such phrase started to be repeated as a joke when someone was supposedly skeptical about something. There will be no time here to present details of each perspective. However, we would like to point that Andrade was very rigorous in his investigation, especially concerning poltergeist cases, following recommendations given by experts like Bender, Playfair, Rogel, and Rowe. But he had a very particular interpretation of data collected and facts observed. He always supposed the action of a being from a fourth dimension in poltergeist cases, and the interference of black magic done by a sorcerer or a priest of an African or African American religion. And very clearly, Andrade accepted and said that he corroborated the reception of information from discarnate spirits and their influence in cases that would involve extrasensory perception. Quevedo, in turn, admitted that living human beings were capable of obtaining information from the environment and from other minds, and also of influencing matter. However, Quevedo said that parapsychology proved that those capacities were limited to 200 years in the future in the case of precognitive events, and to 50 meters far from the body in the case of PK events. Anything beyond those parameters would be due to divine intervention, and in this way he explained Christian miracles. So he was defending the Catholic explanations for some paranormal events. Andrade and Quevedo were the highlights in the Brazilian scenario, but there are also other important figures from the 70s onward who are worth mentioning because they contributed to build the current image of parapsychology in the country. So, an example is Artemio Longi. Unfortunately, I couldn't find a photo of him. He created what he called the parapsychometric report, a questionnaire that could supposedly evaluate the respondent's level of paranormality. He was in several TV shows talking about it. Many members of the general public wanted to be evaluated and to check if they had paranormal powers. Also, an ex-Catholic priest got prominence in the media, Marcos Alija Ramos. He used to say that studies conducted in the laboratory of parapsychology at Duke University, yes, those studies made by the Hines and their staff, had been successful in controlling the sixth sense, and he himself had learned how to do it, so that he could make predictions anytime he wanted to. So he said that. Artemio Longi and Marcos Alija Ramos fought great discussions advocating their views on what would be parapsychology and trying to convince the public of their ideas. Both presented parapsychology courses, spreading information about what would be the science. Father Quevedo was also constantly invited to discuss with them, and their heated and sometimes very aggressive, really aggressive debates yielded large audiences for TV shows. In the late 60s, another Catholic priest, Father Albino Aresi, also became very popular in the country and remained popular in the 70s and 80s. He announced that he had a different and a revolutionary method of healing called parapsychology. After Quevedo, Arese was probably the most popular Catholic parapsychologist active in Brazil. He wrote books and founded in 1967 the Mensana Institute, active until today, now with the name Preobino Arese Clinic. His goal was to apply a new clinical parapsychological methodology to treat physical and especially mental illnesses. Arese's institute had place at first in the crypt of a church, but soon it was expanded and moved to its own headquarters. Arese used many electronic devices for measurement and control, especially of nervous disease. Among the diseases that he said he could treat through parapsychology are stress, breakdown or fatigue, neurosis, psychosis, schizophrenia, phobia, depression, insomnia, anxiety, asthma, allergies, alcoholism, drug addiction, psychosomatic illnesses, maladjusted personality, deviations, and sexual weakness like impotence, frigidity, learning problems, mental illness in general, and Chagas disease, among others. So for him, parapsychology was really powerful to heal everything. Yes, this is the list. Arese died in 1988, leaving some followers who, however, have not achieved prominence as he had in the 70s and 80s, and they are still working in the same line of thought and doing the same thing. Okay. In 1984, Pedro Antônio Grisa founded in Florianópolis, in the state of Santa Catarina, in the south of Brazil, the IPAP, Institute of Parapsychology and Psychic Potential, that offers education in what he calls natural therapy and parapsychology practice. The IPAP, as they say in Portuguese, aims to disseminate, teach, and train professional trained to apply the Grisa system, a simplified name to, in English, I hope the translation is okay, scientific system independent of research, analysis, and parapsychological guidance, Dr. Pedro Antônio Grisa. So it's a system with his name, because he created it. Grisa has a very particular approach to parapsychology on which he bases what he calls clinical parapsychology. Based on self-knowledge, Grisa believes that it's definitively demonstrated that the human mind is the triggering agent of paranormal phenomena. The subconscious, that would be the mechanical function of human mind, triggers the psi energy or mental energy that creates extrasensory perception and psychokinetic phenomena. Grisa states that parapsychology has to be practical in order to help people to solve their problems. He is not worried about scientific attempts to understand psi phenomena. He proposes to use them to diminish individual suffering and to manage practical problems, such as food preservation by mental power, eliminating artificial cooling, for example. Grisa's system is based on several assumptions that are still under discussion and are subject of much controversy in scientific parapsychology. Even though currently IPAP offers a professional training course and a post-graduation course in partnership with the University of the Itajaí Valley and the University Center of San Jose. A common point among the different perspectives presented is that all of them claimed to be scientifically based, but it's clear that they are biased non-scientific approaches, and even when they are not specifically religious. The debate between Spiritists and Catholics lasted throughout the 80s and continued less strained until the mid-90s. Besides the most prominent figures mentioned before, other people calling themselves parapsychologists were in the radio and TV, saying they had the gift of healing or clairvoyance, and advertising their private practice, something that contributed to the confusion between the terms psychic, paranormal, and parapsychologist, as if they meant the same thing. In parallel with the different approach and ideological disputes presented, some more impartial information on parapsychological research conducted in the United States, Europe, and the Soviet Union about parapsychological phenomena started to be spread in Brazil from the 70s. Well-written articles published in popular newspapers brought news especially about the work of the Rhine and their team. Popular curiosity about the subject was piqued by the disclosure of the alleged psychokinetic phenomena produced by Uri Geller and other alleged Brazilian psychics which appeared on TV. This helped to attract the interest of some researchers from academia. However, the image of parapsychology as something linked to religious beliefs, spiritualists or spiritists or Catholic, anti-spiritists or New Age-like practice, kept universities from getting involved in parapsychology. Despite the difficulties, some researchers got some important contacts between the 70s and the 90s, especially in terms of scholarly work, which led to new ways for the development of the study of science in Brazil. Before we present this academic work, we would like to talk. I am talking, but the text is ours, okay? Wellington will talk in a while. We would like to talk briefly about some associations which goals were to defend and fortify points of view and ideas about parapsychology, its epistemology, objectives, and other topics. The discussion will be very brief because none of those associations were very successful in its purpose. So next slide. So we have here the association and society. As far as we know, in Rio de Janeiro, 2 organizations were founded with the objective of organizing the field in Brazil. ABRAP, Brazilian Association of Parapsychology, and FEBRAP, Brazilian Federation of Parapsychology, both founded in the 70s. They had a clear spiritist approach and formed a system called FEBRAP-ABRAP. FEBRAP was a regulatory agency of the practice of parapsychology in the country. ABRAP was a professional association of parapsychology which aim was to bring together individuals from all over Brazil and to foster research institutes affiliated to them. We have no news about recent activities and we not even know if they are still active. Linked to the system FEBRAP-ABRAP, another kind of organization has emerged in Brazil, the CONRECs, the Regional Councils of Parapsychology. As some groups pursue the recognition of parapsychology as a profession, since the clinical parapsychology, since the 80s, CONRECs have been established in the country. As far as we know, there were already 6 CONRECs established in the country in the 90s. In Rio de Janeiro, Pernambuco, Pará, Amazonas, Minas Gerais, and Brasília. These are Brazilian states. The cohorts are a labor stamp body with the objective of monitoring the professional activities of parapsychologists registered in the council. By the way, we are not registered in this kind of council. Other efforts in terms of professionalization, especially with clinical purpose, are done in other states like Santa Catarina, where Pedro Brisa has his institute, and where there is the SIMPAS, Labor Union of Parapsychologists of Santa Catarina. Such organizations reflect the perspective of parapsychology and its supposedly practical usefulness. Such kinds of organizations are of special interest to those who have a professional view of parapsychology in terms of application of therapeutic techniques, something that is very controversial. In February 2nd, in 1996, a group of Brazilian researchers, then all members of IPA, the Ibero-American Association of Parapsychology, founded in 1995, and also members of the Parapsychological Association, including me, and Wellington, founded the SBPP, the Brazilian Society for Advancement of Parapsychology. The main objectives of this society were integrating professionals and work for the development of parapsychology as a science in Brazil by enabling and facilitating the exchange of information and promoting courses and events, such as discussion forums, symposiums, and conferences. Everything related to parapsychology in terms of research, ethics, education, and counseling would be monitored by the society. However, the SBPP, as well as IPA, also had a brief life, being active for only about 2 or 3 years. We have no news about any other organization like those societies. In the 90s, some Brazilians became members of international organizations like the Parapsychological Association, of which I was the first Brazilian woman to become a member, and the SPR and the ASPR. Both of us became affiliates of the PF in 2001. The contact with foreign researchers and participation with the international community was important for the change and advancement of the field in Brazil. From the 90s, some Brazilians participated of the summer study program organized and offered by the Foundation for Research on the Nature of Man, today Rhino Research Center, something that, together with more access to the international parapsychological community, improved studies in the area. We particularly think that the most important developments for parapsychology as a science came from researchers and groups properly involved in research and from the introduction of psi research into the universities in the country. Now we will present some groups which were important for the organization of conferences and courses that boosted the interest in the field. Those institutes, founded by Quevedo and Andrade, CLAP and IBPP, respectively, were important in the Brazilian scenario and were already mentioned. We would like to add, however, that they also were important in terms of education in parapsychology. IBPP was involved especially with a non-accredited parapsychology undergraduate and graduate course in a spiritist college in the south of Brazil. And CLAP, besides conducting case studies and not experimental studies because they were radically against experimentation, was responsible for organizing non-accredited parapsychology courses in different parts of the country and also in some confessional colleges and schools. So let's see. In the Brazilian Northeast, the IPPP, Institute of Psychobiophysics Research of Pernambuco, an independent, non-academic institution founded in 1973 by Walter da Rosa Borges. You can see his photo here. Had initially a spiritist approach, but the group adopted a more scientific approach after being in contact with other groups in the country and abroad. Members of IPPP have particularly conducted case studies. The Institute has promoted and promotes courses and important international conferences. Several monographies written by its students and members have been published, besides the publication of several editions of the Yearbook of Parapsychology. In Curitiba, state of Paraná, in the south of Brazil, in 1985, the Faculdade de Ciências Biopsíquicas do Paraná, we call it Unibem, an spiritist college, started to offer a non-accredited course of specialization in studies of consciousness, with a concentration in parapsychology. And in 2000, they started an undergraduate course. In the 90s, the spiritist emphasis of the parapsychology course started to be changed, becoming more scientific. It happened thanks to some teachers and students who influenced at first by Professor Joe de Assis Garcia, currently not active in the field, started to be in contact with other Brazilian and with foreign institutions and researchers. Thus, Vera Lúcia O'Reilly Cabral Barbeiro, the pioneer of gaseous experiments in Brazil, and Tarcísio Roberto Paulo, both who had founded a Center for the Study of Dreams and published the journal Fator-Psi, Iliamar Rebeca Uba and Luiz Henrique Cardoso were greatly responsible for the change. Unfortunately, due to political administrative questions, they left the college sometime after another side researcher, Carlos Alberto Tinoco, became coordinator of the course. Posteriorly, Fábio Eduardo Silva, who had also been a student at Unibem, took on the task of maintaining a scientific approach in parapsychology in the institution. He organized a well-structured laboratory where he conducted gaseous experiments granted by the Al Foundation from Portugal. With amazing personal efforts, Fábio Silva and his group of students and collaborators organized, between 2002 and 2011, 7 conferences called Psi Meetings, bringing together researchers from all over the country and some important foreign researchers too. In 2011, Silva was also the host of the 54th Annual PA Convention in Curitiba, when the 7th Psi meeting was also held. Unfortunately, due to an institutional crisis, he had to quit his activities at Unibem. Reginaldo Iraoka, another former student and now a teacher at Unibem, then tried to keep the course going on. However, the course lost students and much of its scientific identity, and due to economic problems and for having low demand for the course, no classes are offered since 2014. It's noteworthy that another former Unibem student, Ricardo Eppinger, earned his PhD at the Cochrane Chair Unit of the University of Edinburgh, with a dissertation comparing psi performance in dreams and gestures. In the late 80s and 90s, other Brazilian accredited universities supported parapsychological meetings and courses, even though their courses were not accredited. So, University of São Francisco was open to parapsychological courses thanks to the efforts of Konrad Lindmeyer, a German Franciscan priest and Jungian psychologist. He studied parapsychology with Hans Bender in Germany and worked at CAP with Quevedo for about 20 years, but he had a more scientific posture than Quevedo and made experimental studies using tarot cards to test extrasensory perception. His PhD research was on ESP and neurological anomalies. Activities at the University Estácio de Sá were organized by André Persa de Carvalho, who did some relevant work in the field, especially related to poltergeist investigations. Besides publishing a book about dreams, Carlos is asking what Conrad is doing now. Well, we have no news about him, and we don't know if he is still in the area. We not even know if he is still in Brazil. In fact.
He's back to Germany now.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Wellington is saying he's back to Germany now. So he's not here anymore, and don't know if he's doing some research yet. So going back to André Persa de Carvalho, he did some relevant work in the field, especially related to poltergeist investigations. Besides publishing a book about dreams, co-authored with Stanley Krippner, he also offered some courses, lectured, and organized seminars in the 90s. For some years, now he has not been working in the field anymore, so he gave up. Still in Rio de Janeiro, in the middle 90s, University Veiga de Almeida offered an accredited specialization course in science and parapsychology coordinated by the psychologist Lourdes Oberg. The course focused the relationship between parapsychology and other sciences. The course had a quite good academic level, but we have no information about it, and we do not know when it was discontinued. Before that, there was a non-accredited postgraduate course promoted by FEBRAP, ABRAP, those associations, do you remember? In partnership with the University Society Augusto Mota in Rio de Janeiro. We have to run, too much information. Courses offered at University São Judas and also University Anhembi Morumbi in the late 80s and 90s were organized by our own group, founded informally in 86 and officially in 89 by Wellington Zangari and two friends, Paulo Costa Milan and Rodolfo Teixeira. Zangari was one of Quevedo's collaborators, but because of divergent ideas, he decided to have his own study group that soon became a research group, the Eclipse Institute for Scientific Research in Parapsychology. In 1990, Eclipse organized the first conferences Eclipse of Parapsychology and had the participation of several representatives of parapsychology in the country, including Quevedo, something that provided an unprecedented contact between various researchers in Brazil. In 1991, I became a member of the group, and together with Wellington and other members, worked in order to promote scientific study of psi in the country and establish psi research in universities. Case and field studies were done, as well as discussions of the topic in TV shows and radio programs. From 1992 to 1993, Eclipse edited and published the Brazilian Journal of Parapsychology, which purpose was to promote parapsychology as a science and to publish both foreign and Brazilian articles. Because of financial and social difficulties, lack of support due to the general biased understanding of parapsychology, it stopped publication in 1993. In 1993, the group was integrated to AMB Morumbi College, today AMB Morumbi University. There, a 360-hour specialization course was offered between 93 and 94. Still in 93, both of us attended the summer study program at FRNM, today Rhino Research Center, something that contributed to changes that would come later. Since then, the group has changed the name according to the perspective it assumed or the directions that it plans to introduce psi research in academy. In 95, Eclipse became Inter-Psi, or Inter-Psi as they say in the US and Europe, marking an interdisciplinary perspective of the study of psi phenomena and experiences. In 96-97, we collaborated with Dr. Zingrone in an experiment of distant healing, São Paulo, Las Vegas, granted by the Al Foundation. The experiment consisted of measuring possible effects that Umbanda's mediums in São Paulo, Brazil, tried to produce in the bodies of patients at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. We had some good results. It was a productive experience of partnership with a foreign and experienced researcher. Along the time, we had some other important experiences participating in international conferences in Brazil and abroad, and improved the contact with other Latin American researchers, especially from Argentina, Chile, and Mexico. Our aim was to make Eclipse and later Inter-Psi be a kind of bridge for those interested in parapsychology and to bring good quality information and provide contact with other researchers. After 2 years as an independent group, from 97 to 99, Inter-Psi was incorporated is a good word here, incorporated into the International Center for Persian Studies. Then part of the Communication and Semiotics postgraduate program at the Pontifical Catholic University of São Paulo, where I was a PhD student and later a teacher. Inter-Psi was there from 1999 to 2009, a very important period to develop activities, researches, courses and conferences, and to mature. Parallel to the activities at PUC, Inter-Psi kept the Eileen Colley Library, an independent collection of about 2,000 volumes on parapsychology and related subjects, open to anyone interested in the topic. Unfortunately, the library closed in 2006 because it is homeless. But the books are kept and we are still trying to make them available as a unique library. In 2009, we began a project to establish our research group, now called Inter-Psi, Laboratory of Anomalistic Psychology and Psychosocial Processes, at the Institute of Psychology at the University of São Paulo. We call this university USP. The most important public university in the country, where Wellington got a position in 2008 as a Psychology of Religion teacher in the Social Psychology department. Since 2010, our laboratory has been established at USP. So, Eclipse became Inter-Psi as it is today. Here, you must be asking, where is parapsychology in the middle of such an anomalistic psychology thing? So it's a good question. I'll explain. Despite of our efforts to clean up the popular image of parapsychology as a misused term, we still find some resistance to it. It can be problematic when you ask for grants in Brazil, for instance. And the research field needs resources to keep growing. However, despite all the trouble the term parapsychology can cause, we have not met opposition to the study of psi. On the contrary, the interest in studying psi is growing and growing in Brazil. Recently, 2010, our research group adopted the term anomalistic psychology to designate our field of study, expanding the spectrum of interests, not adopting the extreme skeptical posture of the beginnings of the anomalistic psychology in the 80s. We focus the study of what is psychological in anomalous experiences, but we are not closed to the possibility of testing the existence of unknown processes of interacting with the environment capable of producing theoretical information and objective physical effects. This has attracted more students and interested people in general, besides contributing to the improvement of the dialogue with other study areas and the insertion of psi research into the scientific mainstream. It does not mean that we have abandoned parapsychology. Now, we have more possibilities to encourage people to listen to us and understand the relevance of scientific and serious parapsychological studies. This was not the first time that research on parapsychology has been done at USP. Despite all difficulties described before, in 1972, the first PhD dissertation on a parapsychological subject was defended at the Institute for Psychology at USP. Adelaide Peters Lessa conducted a precognition experiment using participants from different religious groups. During her PhD course, she went to the US for an internship at the FRNM, to the Ryan Research Center in Durham, North Carolina, and had Dr. J.B. Ryan as her advisor. Her dissertation was published as a book, what contributed to divulge good quality information on psychology. Other important contests were our master's thesis and PhD dissertations with parapsychological subjects. And they are listed here, but we will talk more about this in a while. So I will go to the next slide and later we go back to our research. Okay? We would like to mention also the activities done at Federal University of Juiz de Fora in Minas Gerais. Yes, Carlos is asking if Adelaide Lessa published a book about her work. Yes, she published a book titled Precognition. Yeah. We would like to mention also the activities at Federal University of Juiz de Fora in Minas Gerais. There, currently, Alexander Moreira Almeida coordinates the NUPS, Research Center in Spirituality and Health, that belongs to the Health Postgraduate Program of that university. NUPS activities consist of publications in journals and scientific books, the organization of conferences and lectures, in the popularization of information in mass media, and in research. NUPS research lines are epidemiology of religiosity and health, spiritual and religious experiences, and history and philosophy of research on spirituality. Moreira Almeida is a Brazilian psychiatrist and parapsychologist whose areas of study are paranormal phenomena, health, mental disorders, mind-body issues, religion, and spirituality. He coordinates the position statement on spirituality and religion in psychiatry of the World Psychiatric Association. And he also coordinates the Health Postgraduate Program at his university. He is a declared participant of the Brazilian Spiritist movement and is known for his studies on mediumship. His studies are mentioned by Spiritist associations that claim that they offer scientific evidences for Spiritist dogmas, as well as they are instrumental against the idea that mediumship could involve some psychopathology. His PhD dissertation was presented at the Medicine School at USP, titled Phenomenology of Mediumistic Experiences, Profile and Psychopathology of Spiritist Medium. It consisted of an empirical study of the phenomenology of mediumistic experiences and the psychopathological profile of Spiritist mediums. He studied Kardashian Spiritist mediums using different questionnaires, sociodemographic and mediumistic activity questionnaires, psychiatric instruments, self-report psychiatric screening questionnaire, and social adjustment scale and interview schedules, besides a qualitative interview. Healthy mediums were compared to mentally non-adjusted mediums. Moreira Almeida found that the medium's participants had a high social educational level, a low prevalence rate of minor psychiatric symptoms, and a reasonable level of social adjustment, what made him to conclude that the mediumness trance would not be a symptom of dissociative identity disorder. Mediumness experiences began generally in childhood, and despite they have some schizophrenia-like features, like hallucinations or sense of external control or influence, they are not necessarily related to schizophrenia. Moreira Almeida has students at his university, and his group is currently one of the most promising centers for research of anomalous experiences in Brazil. But there are some criticisms that point to a possible biased spiritist agenda behind its production. Now, going to the end of our presentation, I hope we can have time to say everything we prepared. We will talk about some efforts and plans of action. At USP, now talking about our group, we have co-supervised several activities which have been developed with the help of Wellington's postgraduate students who have in turn worked on master theses or in PhD dissertations, and now there are 2 postdoctoral fellows. The topics these students and researchers have worked on have included anomalous experiences in general, surveys, experimental field and case studies, and especially ESP, PK, OBE, UFO abductions, and mediumistic experiences. Most of the students are also members of InterC, and some of them coordinate study groups according to their interests. There is a confluence of interests concerning parapsychology, anomalistic psychology, and psychology of religion that has contributed to improve and boost the production of articles, books, chapters, and academic research in the country. As we and Maraldi pointed out in a recent publication, not only in InterC but also for students and researchers from other universities and postgraduate programs, among the phenomena or experiences studied by anomalistic psychology, psychology of religion and parapsychology, mediumship seems to be a good exemplar of relationship between these research fields. It involves, at the same time, dimensions of an apparent anomaly and of a religious experience, but also permits evaluations both of individuals who claim to manifest it and the religious groups in which it's practiced. This special aspect was noticed since the first systematic studies of mediumship. The contribution of these studies for the development of certain psychological and psychiatric ideas at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century has been studied by historians. Despite the enormous prevalence of mediumnistic practice and allegations in different Brazilian religious contexts, only recently psychology, especially anomalistic psychology, has dedicated attention to this stuff, although it's possible to find some references and studies conducted over the 20th century. More recently, studies approaching different aspects of mediumship have been conducted. This includes mediums' cognitive functions and personality characteristics, psychodynamics of mediumship, psychosocial aspects, biopsychosocial perspectives, mental health variables, sorry, I had to change the slide. Mental health variables associated to mediumship, neurophysiological studies, and experimental evaluations of ontological hypotheses, that is, the study of the nature of existence or reality of paranormal phenomena. In the slide, we mentioned some studies as examples. From this production, it's also important to highlight the development of specific criteria for the differential diagnosis between healthy and pathological anomalous experiences. In this context, mediumship gets rid of the negative stereotype of mental illness. Instead of being considered as a result of morbid dissociation processes, mediumistic practices and experiences become the outcome of normal and culturally disciplined dissociation. Besides the mentioned studies, we have already mentioned Moreira Almeida, of Moreira Almeida's PhD research about the experiences, profile, and psychopathology of spiritist medium. Now, Wellington will present very briefly a little more about our studies at USP and other studies we have done. It's not possible to present them in detail now, but if you want more details of any mentioned study, please, you can write to us, and we will be happy in sending more information or be a bridge of contact between you and the researchers. So now Wellington will talk to you.
Let's ask you to change the position
Okay.
that I have in this chair.
Okay.
So I can control the mouse. Hi folks! It's good to be here and this wonderful activity. In my master dissertation, I attempted to understand the importance of paranormal experience for the construction of religion, particularly Kardecist Spiritism and Catholicism. In my doctorate, I analyzed possession mediumship in Umbanda, a Brazilian religion, and what it means to be a medium from the point of view of mediums themselves. I evaluate the medium's narratives from a psychosocial perspective using a role theory proposed by a Swedish psychologist, Hjalmar Sundén, and I built a model of mediumship that other researchers in Brazil are using to understand various religious manifestations in general as well as with mediums. Some of my students have done research on mediumship. For example, Ricardo Ribeiro compared three other mediumistic religions: Kardecist, Spiritism, Santo Daime, and Vale do Amanhecer, using the same model, and two other students have studied other aspects of mediumship. Next slide. Everton Maraldi completed a psychosocial analysis of mediumship and currently is studying cognitive aspects of mediums as a postdoctoral fellow. Jefferson Rishaw is studying psychopathology in mediums and non-mediums. By the way, in my postdoctoral research, I analyzed precognitive capacities in mediums. I did an experiment using a precognitive habituation technique of Daryl Ben. No significant results were found pro the existence of precognitive abilities. Regarding other topics studied by InterSci members, in her master's thesis at PUC, Fátima Machado discussed misuse of parapsychology in favor of religious interests in the country. In her first PhD dissertation in communication and semiotics, she studied the language status of poltergeist phenomena or experiences from two semiotic points of view. And here her second PhD, super brain, from in her second PhD dissertation, now in psychology at USP, she surveyed psi-related anomalous experience, ESP and PK, in daily life, in their association with beliefs, attitudes, and well-being. Prevalence and social relevance of anomalous or paranormal experience is a topic of interest to InterSci members. In 1994, Fátima Machado and I did the first survey with university students in Brazil. Machado continued to explore this in her doctoral research in psychology. She elaborates a questionnaire of prevalence and relevance of psi, and apply it, enlarging the number and the range of the respondents so that the sample did not consist solely of students. An amazing of 82.9% was the prevalence of respondents who gave positive response to at least one psi experience, ESP and or PK. I will repeat, 82.9%. It's a great number. Other students and members of InterSci are following up this line of research, but with different samples, using the same questionnaire. For example, Rishaw elaborated another questionnaire of prevalence and relevance of anomalous experiences, survey not only ESP or PK experience. Alessandro Shimambukuro tried to survey faculty at the University of São Paulo. Camila Torres is comparing conventional Protestant groups to neo-Pentecostal groups. Fábio Silva and Jefferson Rishaw are both also using the instrument with a general public in some specific groups. The prevalence of experience continues to be high, what confirms Brazil's popular fame as a kind of warehouse of psi experiences. By the way, this has attracted the attention of some researchers interested in the country, like Stanley Krippner, Playfair, and David Hess, among others. Some of experimental precognition projects were developed by InterSci members. Vanessa Corredato's master's degree consisted in testing children for precognition, and to earn his PhD degree, Fábio Eduardo Silva studied the presentiment effect. For his master's degree, he made a review of literature about the possibility of developing psi abilities. Other students and members of InterPsi have studied personality variables of mediums and other persons who claim to have had paranormal experiences. Leonardo Breno Martins analyzed in his master thesis personality and psychopathological variables of persons claiming to have had different types of contacts with aliens. In his PhD dissertation, he did an ethnographic study of ufological communities. Now, as a postdoctoral fellow, his research is replication of the experiment It's Still Bending, described by Wiseman and Greening. The experiment consists in testing the implications of verbal suggestions in the observation of PK events and implication of the psychology of suggestion and the assessment of eyewitness testimony for anomalous events. Martins will replicate the experiment considering different variables. Sueli Mizumoto and Lívia Martins de Oliveira also analyzed in their master thesis and PhD dissertation, respectively, personality and psychopathological variables of members of a religious group called Santo Daime that uses ayahuasca in rituals in which both adults and children participate. Gabriel Medeiros, on his turn, is investigating another topic in his PhD research, OBE experiences. Gabriel Guerrer, one of postdoctoral fellows, is studying the possibility of psychokinetic effects. He is working on an experiment similar to that of consciousness and the double slit interference pattern done by Zingrone. Another subject of interest is hypnosis. One of InterPsi members, Guilherme Rage, is doing research on it, and he coordinates a study group on the subject. Some experimental research is planned to start soon. At USP, up to now, only under my supervision, there is a total of 7 master theses and 5 doctoral dissertations done. 3 master researchers, 5 doctoral researches, and 3 postdoctoral ones in progress, all of them about anomalous experiences or related topics. Many of them had grants for government agencies. By the way, my master thesis on parapsychology, postdoctoral experimental research on medium's precognitive abilities, and Fátima Machado's PhD dissertation on poltergeist also had grants from government agencies. Besides individual research projects, there are some collective projects being developed by different groups of InterPsi participants. We intend to train postgraduate students to establish their own groups after they finish their doctorates and start working in other universities. And in fact, this is already happening.
Something similar to what has happened in England,
UK.
in UK.
In addition to these activities, we have also worked to establish international agreements to do cross-cultural research and exchange students with other universities. We have already received the visit to outstanding foreign researchers such as Nancy Zingrone, Carlos Alvarado, Stanley Krippner, Chris Rowe, Elizabeth Roxburgh, who lectured, taught short-term course, and had some research meetings with InterSci members. Last but not least, we highlight a very important recent conquest: the offer of anomalistic psychology disciplines or courses in undergraduate and postgraduate courses at the University of São Paulo since 2012. I proposed those disciplines in order to introduce the scientific study of anomalous experiences to psychology undergraduate and postgraduate students. Not only psychology students have attended the courses, but also students from other areas, and also students from different backgrounds. Besides the anomalistic psychology course, which I teach with the collaboration InterSci members, there is a course of introduction to psychology of religion and an introduction to hypnosis. A fruitful dialogue is established among the disciplines, and parapsychologists always present in some way in the course program. Today,
so as it can be seen, there was a great advance in terms of the study of psi phenomena and other correlated anomalous experiences. However, the term parapsychology is not in evidence as before. We believe that it's more important to guarantee the space for doing research and being accepted and listened to. In Brazil, we do not have any extraordinary result except for the 82.9% of prevalence of psi experiences. And we do not even have any truly revolutionary demonstrated model or theory. We consider, however, that we have done good academic and scientific evidence in the field, and much of it thanks to the support of Parapsychology Foundation and friends and colleagues as Nancy Zingrone, Carlos Alvarado, and Stanley Krippner. Unfortunately, we still lack of a tradition of Brazilian case and experimental studies. In order to improve parapsychology as a scientific field, we think that there is still poor replicability of science studies and experiments, and replication is really important. More replications in cross-cultural studies are necessary, never forgetting spontaneous case studies, of course. They would for sure improve the database, and this could help in the development of experimental procedures. In terms of social insertion of psi research, adopting anomalistic psychology perspective has rendered good results in terms of penetration in the psychological community in Brazil. Psychology was the closest in terms of dealing with psi research. With the change of perspective and our efforts to be closer to the psychological community, we have found more opportunities to make the scientific studies of anomalous experiences known. So this was our presentation. We would like to thank for your attention, and if you have any questions or if you want something, some more information about the studies, articles, and well, we'll be happy to send to you. So that's it.
Thank you very much, you guys. It was absolutely wonderful. Anybody has questions and answers, please put them in the chat. You guys have to do the answers. Thank you very much. It was very comprehensive. This presentation and the previous one especially I think make us all, meaning Chris and you, those two presentations I think add to our optimism about the future of the field, because in two countries we see a widening of academic and university-based interest in the topics that are relevant to all of us. It's absolutely marvelous, and it bodes very well for the future of the field. So congratulations, you guys, for all your hard work and all the degrees and all your students and your action plan,
Okay, thank
plan of
you.
action. Now hold on, let's see if somebody has a question. Anybody have a question? Carlos is saying you mentioned Gabriel's OBE research. Can you say more about what he's doing?
He is doing his PhD thesis now. Previously in his master dissertation, he just learned about the experiences. He talked about with people using the interviews to in deep understanding what this experience effectively represents to people. Now he intends to make a huge questionnaire, because
a questionnaire in depth to know more about the experiences.
Wonderful.
To check the experience details. So the questionnaire will be longer than what he had for the interviews.
Because he had noticed that what people talk about OBE experiences is less important that they feel and what they have as experiences. The term out-of-body experience is too short to represent the several characteristics of the experiences have in the natural world.
Wonderful. Carlos's favorite topic, the features of the OBE.
So Gabriel is investigating OBE inside the body, not out of the body. How people feel the experience. So
well, that's a feature set also. So
I'm sure that experience, in fact.
Yeah, very exciting, very exciting. Eduardo is saying some words on the nature-nurture debate for mediumistic phenomena. What do the researchers find?
Sorry, let me see.
Nature-nurture, is it an experience that comes up, say, genetically or whatever, that it's inherent in the human being? Or is this something that is socially developed because they're taught to be mediums, or they're in a mediumistic context? In English, we call that nature versus nurture.
Yes.
Where does it come from?
The biological versus social and cultural aspects.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, there are many social and cultural research about mediumistic phenomena in Brazil now, but they are making generally people from Minas Gerais, University of Juiz de Fora, Alexander's group. They have some neurological interesting research about mediums. So we are not yet with the possibility to talk about this nature question, because we don't have many researchers doing research in this topic. But we have some very interesting results now. We know, for example, that without a very specific culture background, the mediumistic phenomena doesn't happen. So it's necessary some cultural ground to bring
for a person to be a medium.
Be a medium.
He will not. Someone will not be a medium in a social context where mediumship is not part of it. You know, so it doesn't mean it doesn't have a biological aspect. We cannot say that. But what we can say is that the social aspect is really important.
It's important because there are many different types of mediumistic phenomena, and it varies depending on the cultural basis of the medium. There are mediums who talks about reincarnation. There are mediums that talks about resurrection. There are mediums talk about another background, cultural level. It's different of the in this kind of cultures.
In the Paramouc 2016, I think, Fátima, you may be registered for that. Arnaud Delorme, who's at Dean Radin's laboratory, is going to be talking about the neurophysiology of mediumship. So that should be relevant as well. Let's see. Oh, Alex is asking, is there academic research on Chico Javier?
Well, that's something that people try to do, but as he has died some years ago, it's not possible to do too much research, only using his writings and what people say about him. So we cannot say much about it. What we know for sure is that he's a very popular personality and he's very respectable, and many people consider him a saint. In fact, you understand a saint? So many people here are not worried about scientific proof of his mediumistic gift. They just want to know what he said and what he wrote in his books. So it's difficult to do some research. That is a research.
There are two interesting recent research about Chico Xavier productions. One of these is compare the style of books written supposedly by spirits and the original writings of this author. So the comparison show that they are most similar in style. So there are many possibilities of compare the Chico Xavier writings with that author. So it's interesting. The second one is about the messages from alleged spirits. So there are some letters written by supposedly spirits, and the researchers have talked about the content of these messages with the families, and they show how the content is close to the real life of the people dead. It's very new study.
Very interesting. Carlos had said, you mentioned you are making inroads into academia, which is an important contribution that will change the field in Brazil. My question is, have you encountered some resistance, and if so, what specifically?
Yeah, nothing is easy, I would say. But as we said in our presentation, we could do many activities, but for that we had first to demonstrate that we were serious people, we were not trying to do pseudo-medicine or something else, pseudo-psychology or, well, a resistance was found in some people who asked us if anomalistic psychology would not be a disguised parapsychology. So it was good because they asked about it, and we had the opportunity to explain the difference of approach, the limit between parapsychology and anomalistic psychology, the importance of the dialogue between them, and how psychology of religion could be intersectional to those areas too. So the main difficulty we found was due to the image people have of parapsychology as a pseudoscience and or related to a religious perspective. So sometimes it was very funny because some people thought we were very, how can I say in English? We believed a lot inside, and the other said, oh, you are so skeptical. So we are believers or skeptical, depending on the perspective of the person who listened to us. And those were the difficulties. And especially specifically about InterC being established at USP, Wellington was invited to go to a meeting, administrative meeting, where people wanted to know what really he was doing at the university with that group and what kind of research, and to check if it was really scientific and this thing. So he had to go and he explained everything. So we had to be very patient and explain everything all the time. We are asked about what we are doing and we have to repeat and repeat and repeat. So patience is something really important to fight against the prejudice against parapsychology and science research and all the studies in these areas.
Yeah, I think that's very common for all of us, that you find yourself constantly trying to make clear that this is the scientific academic study of psychic phenomena, beliefs, and so on, and the people who have those beliefs and report those phenomena, and you alienate both the very skeptical and the very positive. Because the very positive people don't understand why you're even interested, and the very skeptical people think you're wasting your life. So you have to be very careful and very, very patient, as you say. So Wendy was saying, have you met with any objections from the religious communities, such as evangelical or fundamentalist Christianity?
Sure. Well, I have to tell you that in the 90s, we were invited to speak in all the TV channels except one that belongs to evangelical church. So, it was the only thing that people asked us why we would not go to a kind of TV show they had and where they talked about those topics. And we said, well, we don't know. They have not invited us, but not very explicitly, I would say. Yeah. In general, people here they are happy when they can notice that we are not as Quevedo that says that nothing exists, and so it's funny because they say it because they have the idea that parapsychology is really linked to his perspective. Carlos had asked if we were asked about our religion affiliation, not in the university, but from people, students, or people in courses, not from teachers or people from academia, but from the public in general. Yes, we were already asked what religion we had,
and I have many students from these communities, from religious communities.
Yeah.
So no problem.
Even the members of our group, very mixed. We have people, atheists, Protestants, Catholics, and Spiritists, whatever. So we don't mind about it. What we mind is that if we decide to do scientific research, do a scientific research. So follow the procedures, try to do a good study. So that's what we are worried about in terms of religion. But another question.
Carlos is saying, do not pathologize phenomena such as...
Yes, we do not pathologize the phenomena because Quevedo explicitly said you have to, if you have psi experiences, you have to be cured. So you have to, yes, because he says you cannot do experiments, because if you do experiments, you are stimulating psi phenomena, and you can be crazy if you stimulate psi phenomena because it's an imbalance in your body. So he has this kind of speech because he's clearly against the spiritist phenomenology. So it's a way of saying you cannot train to be a medium, for example, because you are using your mind to this kind of experiences and phenomena, and you cannot do it. So it's clear in his agenda. So
Maurice is asking, you speak of anomalistic psychology. If you have to take a more skeptical stance for gaining scientific recognition because of the presence of a considerable amount of spiritists in contemporary Brazil. But it sounds to me, I don't want to answer this for you, but it sounds to me from what you're saying is that you've got the Quevedistas, you know, on that side, you've got the spiritists, you've got different points of view, sort of like other countries, but very specific to Brazil too, that make life difficult for you. So how would you comment on that?
Difficult. Well, it's like we are the third option.
Yeah.
We are the third option because people say, oh, it's good because it's a relief. We can study these things and we don't have to adhere to this or that vision. We can investigate and we are open to what we will find. We have not to have trivial a priori answers as spiritists and Catholics in Catholics, I would say, have. So we are the third. I'm not we, Wellington and I, but our perspective and all the people who are working in this line of research. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely, and I think that's true here too. That we're the third option.
But it's important to say that we are in a new era in terms of religion in Brazil. The Catholics and the Spiritists are not so strong in terms of dogmas. They are more open to consider also the scientific approach. So
the evangelical are more close.
Yes, the new Pentecostal community.
Yeah, for us here in the States, it's people who have spiritual beliefs. So it could be a Christian religion, something fundamentalist, or it could be even New Age spirituality. And then on the other side are the skeptics, essentially. So we're also a third option, but in a more mixed way, in the sense that there's secular views on both sides that either see us as wasting too much time not following the spiritual path, or just wasting too much time investigating something that doesn't exist. So that's kind of where we sit. Wendy's got one more comment, and then I think we're going to have to close this up because at 3 p.m. is when we start with Mario. So I'm going to move over to the last slide, but I want to say again, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation, very comprehensive. The question, Carlos is being silly. The question and answer period was very good. And for those of you who will be with us in 15 minutes, we have Dr. Mario Varvoglis coming up with Parapsychology à la Française. So hopefully we will all convene at that point. So I want to say thank you from all of us. And
it was a pleasure.
Wonderful. All All right, guys, I'm going to be closing off the course, so thank you again, and
Thank
you.
see you at 3. Bye.
Bye.